This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
This week's ChangeMaker is Mariah Hayden, the Executive Director of New Life Village. Mariah joined the organization in 2016 and has been dedicated to providing safety and stability for children affected by trauma and mental health challenges. Mariah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Mariah, before we start, could you share with us the journey that led you from a background in marketing and project management to now becoming the Executive Director of New Life Village?
Absolutely. That's a good question. So this was a fate thing, actually. I was coming, most of my experience has been marketing, community relations with some dabbling in government contract management, interestingly enough, because my husband was in the Air Force. And so I needed to do something that was portable with him for a couple years. And then mid-career, I had a child. The reason that's relevant is I had really bad postpartum and fell out of the working world for a little while and lost my confidence in my career and all of that stuff. So what led me to New Life Village is I wanted to get back to work after that journey. And I wanted to go somewhere where I could volunteer in case it didn't work out. I wasn't losing a job or getting fired, which had happened while I had my postpartum. So I was introduced to New Life Village to be a volunteer. A friend of mine worked in seniors in service, and she said, "Hey, this place is a great place. They need your marketing skills, your volunteer management skills. They need your organization. You should check it out as a volunteer." So I was getting strong again. I was ready to go back out there, and so I came and spoke to the then executive director and said, "Hey, I'd love to volunteer here. What's going on?" And it just so happens that they were transitioning executive directors at the time, and they were doing some hiring. So I asked, "Okay, what are you hiring for?" I said, "Oh, that's kind of a match to what I'm doing." And I sent in my resume, and instead of starting as a volunteer, I actually got hired, which was pretty cool. So it was my first job and the only job I've had since that sort of mental health break that I have with having a child.
Thank you for sharing that personal testimony. You mentioned so many things for women, CEOs, reintegration into the workplace, and how you handled that phase of life. It's a great testimony for all of us to kind of pause here for a minute because you covered so many powerful things. You know, when you were looking at that opportunity and transitioning from even volunteer to executive director, how were you bolstering yourself for such a transition back into that workplace mode?
The first position I was hired for was assistant director. So I didn't go straight into the reins of executive director, but the agency was small and I wasn't exactly sure what I was signing up for. I had no idea I was going to be getting into the world of construction development and affordable housing and all these things that comes later in the story. But the cool thing about my experience is it was a Jill of Trades experience. So a lot of marketing, but I'd worked in charter schools. I'd worked at a television production station, KPBS in San Diego. I'd actually tried to be a police officer. I went to a police academy in San Diego. I had a lot of education in communications and marketing. And so I was kind of going where I could use those varied skill sets. And in fact, the name of my I had marketing consulting company before I did this was called Jill of Trades Marketing. So the role was a Jill of Trades role where I had to use these different tools in my tool belt. I'd even sold insurance, which is very relevant to managing this property. We have like 13 insurance policies. So some of it was just the opportunity found me and I was like, okay, let's see where this leads. From a mental health perspective, honestly, I'd lost 2 jobs while I was sick. So I was like just happy somebody wanted to hire me. I thought I had this neon sign on my head that said, don't hire because I'd been through such a tough period. So what I've always done in my career and what has been really helpful for me in this position in the 8 years I've been here is I just follow the breadcrumbs. And when the breadcrumbs go east, I go east. When they go west, I go west. When they stop, I find a different trail. And so that's what I did with this position. As I worked here, I eventually became the executive director. And we learned that what we were doing here was affordable housing. And we got into affordable housing funding, affordable housing development, like a bunch more things came. I didn't know what I was doing in those areas, but again, it was following those breadcrumbs that led us to be able to grow and develop expertise in those areas.
And you followed your skill sets and your talents, even when you were experiencing, this physical and, change in where you were. And you didn't just pursue that perfect job description, which I think sometimes we all get stuck on when we're trying to fit ourselves into a certain mold.
Yep, absolutely. Something else I've learned along my career is if I don't know how to do something, I know how to find out how to do something. So if you just have the confidence to ask the right questions or find the right mentors, you can teach yourself what you need to learn. And I think that has helped me tremendously in this position.
Before we dive deep into New Life Village, I have to ask you a question. And I hear this for a lot of people who are trying to find their placement in the corporate world, especially women who are reintegrating, like you've described, or trying to move up. What would you say, or what message do you have for entry-level employees or women integrating back into the workforce about what they can do, should do, or how to navigate? Because you've done a great job here in your own resiliency. Can you offer some words of wisdom?
I think especially in your early career, in your early 20s, I think your 20s and the early part of your career are more about finding what doesn't work, which will help you lead to what does work. So I encourage people to make mistakes and try something. And if you figure out, this isn't my cup of tea, that's really valuable information to go to look for what does work. And when I say cup of tea, it's not just your skill set and am I doing the technical things at this job that I want to do. But for me, it's very important. I have a very scrappy background. I was raised by biker parents. I was raised around drugs and crime and all this stuff. And I have a very sort of interesting personality that can hang out with all sorts of different people. But it's that very scrappy, hardworking sort of background. And I need a culture that I can fit into. So don't be afraid to be picky as a woman of, I can be myself here. I can fit in here. I still need to be professional, but this is where I can feel like I can be me. I think if we look for jobs where we don't fit into the culture and we have to be busy pretending to be somebody we're not, we can't really excel at doing the job because we're too busy fitting into the culture. So I would say figure out who you are. Don't apologize for that and find a place that values you for who you are. And if that's not the place, find the place where that works. I think that's really important.
Excellent. I wish that I'd been able to talk to you early in my career because that is just so valuable. And your authenticity here is really coming through. I appreciate that.
I didn't learn any of these lessons gracefully. I'll tell you that. But they've come, and luckily I've had the the grace or the faith or something to recognize the lesson.
So introduce us to New Life Village. Where are you located? Who do you serve? What's your mission? Tell us all about it.
New Life Village, think about an apartment complex meets a YMCA. So only people who are preventing children from going into the foster care system or removing them from the foster care system can apply to live here. We have 48 townhomes to our mission on a 12-acre property. The reason why that's relevant here in the Tampa area is we have an incredible foster care crisis. We have unfortunately led the state in the number of youth in out-of-home care for the last decade. Our numbers are getting a lot better. There's a lot of multi-systems that are overlapping, causing the numbers to be so high in our region, but a lot of children in out-of-home care here in the area. Then we have Tampa's become very popular place to move as Florida has post-COVID, but also Super Bowl, all kinds of stuff. A lot of folks, there's really a big housing boom in Tampa that's not projected to get better anytime soon. And that has really driven our market rates up significantly. So back to that apartment complex, everybody who qualifies to live here and gets to live here is appreciating affordable housing rate. So a 2-bedroom townhouse is just about $1,000 a month. That's $600 under market. 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms aren't much higher than that. So these families are preventing children from going to foster care, or they're removing them from foster care. Prevention looks like an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent. So somebody related to the child is getting a call saying, hey, your nephews, nieces and nephews are going to go into foster care. Would you like to take custody of them so they don't officially enter the system? So we have a bunch of kinship families here, which is is the prevention. Then we have families that are fostering to adopt, families who have adopted or are adopting. In a word, we're trying to get these youth that have been in the foster care system to permanency, which means they know who home is. They're not bouncing around anymore, wondering who's going to be their permanent home. So once they get here and they have that housing stability, our program team works with them to advocate for them, to help them get lawyers, to help them do whatever is necessary so that child stops being in foster status. Because foster status means I don't know who's going to be raising me. So that's our first mission. Then we offer the affordable housing. That's our first program here. The second program here is a wraparound services program. It's a long name. It's called a trauma-informed wellness, resilience, and character development program. But long story short, that's broken up into 2 segments. The first segment is where the YMCA analogy comes in. So we have a calendar of events every day that has all kinds of activities for the caregivers, for the children. And then we also have another population that lives here that I didn't tell you about before. Those are senior citizens. And we have about 8 to 10 seniors that live here, and they act as surrogate grandparents, tutors, mentors, village elders to these families and these kids. So you've heard the expression, it takes a village to raise a child. The seniors are really our special sauce to help accomplish that. Every resident who lives here, every family who lives here has a service commitment. So they have to be involved with the vets. They have to be involved with village beautification and keeping the village beautiful and clean and the weeds pulled and the flowers planted. They have to help in the production of these events, whether it's movie night or playground time or whatever. For the kids, there is swim lessons, academic tutoring, birthday parties, anger management or resilience stuff for kids. So trauma kids, just because the trauma has stopped, the effects of the trauma will never stop. So we work with that family to get them on their healing journey. We have, it's technically case management like social workers, but we don't call it that. We call it family support plans. So we have a dedicated person that calls each family every month and say, hey, how's it going? Are you able to pay the bills this month? Does somebody need a medical referral? Are we in therapy services? How's Johnny doing in school? Should Johnny be in the specialized charter school for children with IEPs? Or should Johnny be at the local magnet school? And then we assist the parents to help the child get there. So heavy duty programming, events and services for the families, the residents, and then those family support plans. Our goal is that families are here for a season. Families are qualified to live here as long as they have a child in the household that qualifies. So our youth are actually youth up until the age of 22 because there's a developmental difference. Your physical age and your social age are often different with trauma. Families, of course, need to pay rent, they need to be safe, and they need to do their volunteering. But as long as those things are covered, they can stay as long as they have qualifying children. Our hope is that they would participate in the homeownership program. So we are partnered with another agency to set them on the path of getting their finances together, financial literacy, credit literacy, and that they complete those programs and then they can go on to buy a house because we're a rental community. So that's when we really get excited is when families move on to homeownership. But that's kind of us in a nutshell. We have 160 residents. I'll tell you about our expansion in a second. 110 of them are kids. The other 50 to 60 are caregivers. Caregivers is our broad term for adopted parent, foster parent, grandma, whoever's caring for them is a caregiver. And then we just finished a capital campaign in February of 2023 and finished the construction. That brought us 16 more townhouses, 70 more residents. And these townhouses you have to have at least 3 youth to live in them. And they were built specifically for sibling groups. Sibling groups are hard to get placed out of the foster system. And so these are 3 and 4 bedroom units because it's even harder to find an affordable 3 and 4 bedroom apartment or townhouse in Tampa. So we built specifically for that.
This is uniquely creative, and I'm curious how this model came to be. You have so many different innovative layers, whether it's the homeownership or whether it's the trauma-informed care or just looking at the holistic picture of what's going on with this youth. But how did all this start? How did this get created?
There was actually, the original one was in, let me see if I can say this right, Ratontoul, Illinois, near Chicago. And I think it was a college professor had this idea. She was maybe a psychology or sociology professor and said, hey, let's build a community like this. And so it was built out of a BRAC Air Force Base in Illinois. I think it's Generations of Hope. I'll send you a website afterwards. There's sort of a parent organization that's inspired a lot of communities like this around the country. So the original one is in Illinois. There is a whole cluster of them up in the Portland area called Bridge Meadows. There's some in Massachusetts, and there's several others that are popping up around the country. We're not corporate. We all kind of do our own thing, but we do communicate with each other from time to time at conferences and get ideas from each other. How the one here at New Life Village started is our founder, her name is Sister Claire, so she's a Catholic nun. This was her 3rd nonprofit that she founded in the area to serve foster and abused and neglected children. So this is the 3rd concept that she laid foundation for. She found out about the concept, went on a field trip up to Illinois, came back and said, hey, we need one of these here in Tampa. She found a board of directors, a lot of them, some wealthy business people in the Catholic community. Our roots are with her and a Catholic board, but we're a non-denominational organization. So anybody who lives here can live here of all faiths. But that's how we got started. What was really cool and really a blessing for us was that this property was bought in the housing bust in 2008. So we have a 12-acre campus, and there were only 4 buildings here, 4 townhouse buildings, and the clubhouse, which think of the leasing office, if you will. These units were being built for individual sale. So the developer was trying to sell off townhouses for profit. The developer went belly up, and the place sat in bankruptcy for a couple years. 6 people had bought the townhouses. So when the nonprofit came, we had some private owners here. But what's so unique about this is we bought 4 buildings, a clubhouse, 12 acres. So hear me out on this. The rest of our acreage was pad ready. They already put the utilities underground. So when I came along, I had probably 6 acres that I just had to go vertical on. I already had the infrastructure underground. And we bought all of that for $2.5 million in 2008, which is insane because the new buildings we just built, just 2 buildings, not the land, we already own the land, just 2 buildings, 16 townhouses, $5 million. So double the price for 2 buildings. So something higher was involved, and that's finding that land when we found it.
A divine intervention. That's what we'll say it is. Because, you're talking right vision, right place, right time, right price.
And we're smack dab in the middle of Tampa. We're so centrally located. It's a really great location as well. And we haven't carried a mortgage this entire time. We just recently got a line of credit to, as a growing nonprofit in a tough economy, it's nice to have the credit as a backup plan. But we didn't have a mortgage because a private donor paid us all off in the beginning.
Excellent. Let's talk about this expansion here. You said 16 new homes. And is that part of the home ownership, or is that also part of this, intergenerational community you've got?
It's part of the intergenerational community. So originally we had 32 townhouses to our mission. Now we have 48. The board always had the vision that they wanted to serve more families with our land. We have a lot more land we can develop, but we have possibly different plans with that. And they specifically wanted to build 3 and 4 bedroom units because we only had a couple 3 bedrooms in what we call phase 1. It was an inventory of like 3 or 10 3 bedrooms and the rest were 2 bedrooms. So we said, hey, we want more 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms. So that's what the expansion was. $5 million project funded. One part funding was from the state of Florida. We got an appropriation. Elected officials helped us get an appropriation from the state, which was fantastic. Then we got some money through HUD, which is distributed through our county Affordable Housing Services office. And then we had about $2.5 million from private donors. Anybody who wants to do this themselves, you always want to get the private money first, because then you have a match with the county, and then the county and the state wants a match from the county. So just start with the private, then you go to the public, and that's how we did it. It was pretty cool.
So what are some of the challenges and successes through that process? The funding, I'm sure you summarized it nicely, but I'm sure that was not easy to get it all packaged. But just generally speaking, what were some of the challenges and successes?
Well, funding, I think the trick is timing when you have which money. So we just, again, divine intervention has been keeping its eye on us the whole time. We happen to have a nice pot of private money before we went to the county. And then by the time we went to the state, we were able to say, hey, we have these 2 other sources as well. So the challenge with putting the money together and knowing when you want to start construction is really the timing of the money and when they want it expended by. By the time you're going to the state and the county, you want to have a sense of construction prices. One of our challenges was, of course, there's preliminary plans, which you make for they're like concepts, which you get for a baseline quote. But then once you have the money, you go get construction plans, and that's a couple $100,000. And then that'll give you the real dollar amount that you need. A lot of people who might not know what set of plans you need at what point in the process, we learned that one as we went. Luckily, we had already put the whole project through permitting before we ever selected a GC. Had we not done that, the project would have been significantly delayed. But I happen to have some people on the team who knew to get that started. One of the other challenges was we're a very small nonprofit. We've gotten by on a few staff and not a lot of funding up until this point. One of our board members said, oh, we'll be our own developer. Okay. Well, that meant I got to be the developer. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was the executive director. I didn't know how to do construction development. Well, I learned. It was a very stressful year, but I learned quite a bit. Being a construction developer means you're a marriage counselor between an architect, an engineer, and the GC. Because they're all saying, that guy did it wrong, and this doesn't make sense, and this is going to cost more. But we got through it. We figured out how to, in fact, to be our own developer. And in fact, that as an agency, we can get paid for that. We can get money for that. So that was very challenging. It challenged my mental health once again and possibly my waistline with the stress, but we got through it. So that was a challenge of figuring out the right staffing you need to do that project and how much time that takes. But it put us on the map. So now New Life Village is recognized by the county and the state as a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We know how to do it. We know how to get the funding, pay the bills, keep the project on time, and get it done. And now we're better prepared to go into the next project. Who do we need? How much does it cost? That type of thing.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You're stronger for the next time around. Speaking of which, I want to talk about the future of your community, but we have to take a break. Next time on ChangeMakers, Mariah Hayden will share the direct impact New Life Village has had on people's lives.
Honestly, we need to reach out to a lot of the younger youth that have lived here that have gone on to college and other things. I think they're busy in college or doing other sorts of things. We do know about probably 10 or 15 families have gone on to homeownership. So that's something we definitely know. And that's awesome because they were able to save money and get things together to buy a home.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.